Hi everyone, I am going to do a video. It's going to be a little lengthy because I'm reviewing both the adult trial process and the juvenile trial process, plus answering your questions that you guys left for me last week. Okay, so we're going to do a quick review. There's two stages for adults. Okay, there is the pre-trial and the trial. So let's talk about the pre-trial. The first thing that happens is you're arrested. Okay. Then you are, at the time that you're arrested, they tell you what you're being charged with. Okay, so there is no shock, no secret. They tell you, read you your rights. You are being charged with eluding a police officer. Okay, and then they read you your rights, and then you are booked, which means you are then a record of your arrest in jail, where they give your fingerprints. They do all that good business. You have your initial appearance before a judge, and that is where he officially explains all of the things that you're being charged with, and they decide if the charges are serious enough to keep you in jail without bail, or if they will offer you bail and set whatever it will be. Then there is the preliminary hearing, and this is where the judge determines if there is probable cause to move forward. Then you have a grand jury indictment. This is when the grand jury sits down, they review the evidence and decide if there's enough to charge you with an official crime. So I want y'all to think about the idea that all of these steps are for major charges, felonies. This is not going to happen if it's a misdemeanor. It's not going to go to this big through all of these steps. These are for major felonies, okay? Once the grand jury decides if you are indicted, which means you are being officially charged with a serious crime, then you will have an arraignment. It is at your arraignment where you make your plea. If you plead not guilty, it goes to trial. If you plead guilty, there's no need to go to trial. Okay, you don't have to go to any of the trial. If you say, yes, I did this, then they let you out or they keep you in jail and they move forward with your sentencing. Okay, and none of the trial stuff takes place. So what is a plea bargain? So basically, if you have an attorney, let's say you were in a bar fight and you accidentally killed someone. The prosecutor may negotiate with your attorney. Instead of you being charged with murder in the first degree, you might get a lesser charge of manslaughter, meaning you might serve less time. If they can get you to do a plea bargain, that's in the best case scenario for the court system, because then if they do a plea bargain, you said, yes, I'll plead guilty to manslaughter, but not murder, then you will not have to go through the trial process. They also try to negotiate to see if to get you, well, if you don't agree to this plea bargain, you'll have to take your chances in front of a jury, which means you could do 25 years to life. So a plea bargain is the prosecutor's way of trying to negotiate with a person's attorney to keep the actual case from going to trial. Okay, here's another question about jury and grand jury. So there's two different types of juries. Your grand jury is part of the pretrial process. They are the ones that review the evidence and look at the evidence and decide if you should be indicted or formally charged, okay? While a regular jury is part of the trial process. That is where they listen to witnesses, opening and closing statements. They review all the evidence that is being presented for them. They go back and they deliberate and they decide if a person is guilty or innocent. So grand jury is pre-trial, deciding if you are even going to be charged with a serious crime, while jury decides if you're guilty or innocent. Both of them are part of the court process. Both of them are made up of citizens. So I hope that helps a little bit. I'm going to take a pause. Okay, so once you've been indicted, then you have to go through the trial process. Okay, so everyone has the right to a trial. So this is where the first step in the trial process is the selection of the jury. I think one of the questions on the list was, How long does it take? It depends on how high profile the case is. It might be harder to find an unbiased jury when the case has been highly publicized. So that's a little process. When you get called to jury, you have to report for jury duty. It may take a day, it may take a week to decide if you're being dismissed for the jury or not. Once the jury is selected, each side, the prosecution and the defense, do an opening statement. Each side gets to present their evidence, including calling witnesses and cross-examining each other's witnesses. Once all of the presentation of evidence has been done, they have closing statements, and this is like their closing paragraph of their major essay, wanting to leave their viewers, their readers, with a final moment that will help them sway. Once the closing statements have done, the jury deliberates, and this can take a long time. It can take hours, it can take days. They can ask to see the evidence that was presented. They can ask to review photos. They can be asked to review witness testimonies while they're trying to deliberate someone's guilt or innocence. Once they have finished their deliberation, they come forward with their verdict, and that is where they decide if the person is guilty or innocent. If they decide the person is innocent, then they are usually released and they get to go home. If they say that they are guilty, then the judge has the opportunity to review things, and then he will come back and present the sentencing for the adults. All right, so looking at the list of questions that you guys had about the adult trial process, where is the nearest courthouse? The nearest major courthouse for us is on the Marietta Square, where a lot of the court cases take place. Do you know what you're being convicted of before the trial? Absolutely. You know what you're being convicted of or being arrested for, and that arrest leads to a conviction. Can capital crimes file for an appeal? Absolutely. Most of the time it is a capital crime that files for the appeal. When I looked at the Supreme Court website last week, one of the Supreme Court cases was a death penalty case. Once a decision is made, is it in stone? It is in stone unless the attorney files for an appeal and the appeal is accepted. Otherwise, whatever the jury's decision is the jury's decision. And it can end in a mistrial and then they have to start over, but that's kind of rare. How do you file for a trial? You don't file for a trial. If you have committed a crime, you are required to go to trial if you are committing a major felony versus like a misdemeanor. Sometimes if it's a misdemeanor, you're just going before a judge versus going through an entire jury trial. How do you file? Let's see. Where does the lesser offense come from in the plea bargain? So the plea bargain, again, is a negotiation. So the prosecution comes up with, instead of, it's literally like a little negotiation that they may offer to the defense's attorney. And then the defense attorney may come back with, we won't take that as a plea bargain, but we'll take this. So it is something that is negotiated between the two attorneys. That might just make a lesser charge so that they might not get as much time as if it goes all the way through the trial process and the jury finds them guilty. Can you skip a step? No, not in the trial process. You have to go through all the motions. Can the death penalty be revoked? Yes. So there's a couple ways. One is the appeals process, and the other is a executive order by the governor or the president. It's a pardon, a presidential pardon or a gubernatorial pardon that can happen. I don't know the stats about how often. If you do not have an attorney, what happens? If you do not have an attorney, then you are given a court-appointed public defender as your attorney, and they will defend you. And so everyone has the right to an attorney, even if you cannot afford one. So I hope that helps with the adult trial process. So now let's take a look really fast at the juvenile trial process. And obviously, as a juvenile, it is a lot less extensive because in the juvenile process, it's more about protecting the juvenile than disciplining the juvenile. Most juveniles do not get in, become criminals or get in trouble because of the environment they're being raised in. So the priority of the juvenile court system is to ensure that the child is safe and protective and that can be given the opportunity to reform instead of ending up becoming an adult offender. Okay, so when it is a juvenile, the first thing happens is taken into custody, which is just like, it's kind of like arrest. You may be put into the back of a car, et cetera, but it's not like as formal of an arrest as you would for an adult. Then you have an intake hearing, and this is when the officer makes the decisions about the situation for the child. Should they call child services? Should they request a detention hearing? Should they be released to their parents and await to go to court? So these are decisions about what to do with the child to make sure their environment and that they're safe. Okay. Then there is the detention hearing, and they do everything faster with juveniles because obviously you, as a juvenile, there's a safety issue. So you have to have the detention hearing within 48 hours, and they decide how to move forward, whether the juvenile has committed a serious enough crime where they need to be detained, or if they will be released and put in their parents' custody before moving forward with the rest of their charges. And then there's an adjuncatory hearing, which is kind of like the trial process, but remember, there is not a jury in the juvenile trial process. So there's just, you're going before a judge who decides. Remembering too that the consequences for a juvenile may not just be time in juvenile detention. It could be drug counseling. It could be therapy. It could be family therapy. It could be all these different things, trying to give the juvenile the opportunity to overcome the issues they're suffering from before they become an adult offender. And it could be probation. It could be given a parole officer and you have to attend school. So it could be a bunch of different opportunities for what juveniles may be sentenced to versus what an adult is. Then there's also the disposition hearing, and this is where they decide what the sentencing may be. So remembering that the whole idea of the juvenile court system is to make sure the child is protected and to keep the child from being a repeat offender so that they don't grow into living a life of crime. I hope this helps. I don't know if it will. I feel like there are fewer of you guys listening these days, but I'm still here, I'm still teaching, and I still hope that you are learning some things, or at least a little bit every single day. All right, here's the last part, is my shout outs. So for period 1, I'm wondering if Shreya has gotten an early acceptance into med school. Like, she's so smart, and I know she kind of wants to go that avenue. Has she had enough time to study? Could someone accept her? I was wondering for period 2 if Wilson is going to become a talent agent for his 2 younger sisters who were featured and did an excellent job in his Built to Law project. I am wondering if Zoe should spend some time while she's off on digital learning and make an audition tape for CNN, because I think she could have a future in broadcasting. I wonder if Mark Turner is ever watching these. Is he still learning? Is he still hyper? Is he still super smart? I don't know. Ian Carter, if he's listening. I wonder if he has to go to the restroom as much at home as he did in class. Or maybe it's not an issue because he knows he can go all the time. Anyway, those are some questions that I have. Miss you guys. Hope you're doing okay. Please keep trying to learn a little bit every day.